Good day, Sense of Things audience. It's Jeff and Ron here. Welcome to another week of the Sense of Things. Ron, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning, Jeff. Doing well. How about you? Two-thirds of the way through the summer.
Yeah, we're just melting down here, man. I know. I'm not saying anything to you in Arizona, but we are melting.
Yeah. We just set a record yesterday, 27 straight days, temperature over 110.
Yeah.
But other than a couple of days where the humidity is up, it hasn't been too bad.
Yeah.
We had a storm last night, but for the most part, you know what? It's not like 110 elsewhere, but it doesn't matter. In the afternoon,
it's 110,
you
whatever.
feel like an ant under a magnifying glass.
Yeah, just absolutely a hot summer. And I think it's so funny how it's hot here and then it's like pouring down rain up in your old neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I figured I'd kick us off today with a good Florida man story.
Please.
I was doing some Florida man research and came up with a good Florida man story actually from a couple of years ago. So it's not fresh news, but I thought it was a pretty good story.
Doesn't matter. All the Florida man stories eventually recycle themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not sure if this one's going to recycle, but Florida man washes ashore after trying to walk to New York in a bubble device. So I thought this was pretty good. I some things as I was going through here. First off, he startled beachgoers as he washed ashore inside a hybrid bubble running wheel device. He was planning on going from St. Augustine all the way up to New York via this. So the U.S. Coast Guard found him on the beach. He was going to run north to New York or Bermuda. So apparently it's not very easy to steer this device that
I was trying to figure, I'm looking at it. How does he steer it?
You don't. You just keep running and it's like a big hamster wheel and you just keep going. It's like a little paddle wheel.
Yeah, but with the tide, he was eventually going to get thrown up on shore anyway.
Logic and this does not necessarily. Yeah, there's no way you can.
I'm sorry, you're correct. I'm trying to apply
There's
logic.
no way you can run on one side of it and turn it. You're just going to keep going and hopefully you stay out to sea. This is my favorite part of the entire article that I truly loved out of this. When you do something idiotic, you've got to redeem yourself. So he said, my goal is to not only raise money for homeless people, raise money for the Coast Guard, for the police department and the fire department. They are public service and they do for safety and they help other people. So when you do something incredibly stupid, all you need to do is say that you're raising money.
My whole point was, how many people did he have sponsoring that he was supposed to be raising money?
He didn't really get into that. There's not a lot of details on that, but apparently he does have a website.
Yeah, let's not go there and give him any attention.
Yeah, he was trying to prepare for this in 2016 as well. And then he did this in, I believe, 2020 is when this article was from. He did survive on protein bars, tuna, seawater purified through a filter, Gatorade, and chewing gum in this. I just felt that was a very good way to kick our day off, that this guy is sharing. He's trying to do this for others.
I don't know. He was trying to be the Forrest Gump of the ocean. What do you think?
That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, it's Forrest Gump, except, he just didn't think about the whole, okay, how am I going to steer my way across this?
I don't know, but you're right. I was trying to apply logic and understand why. And at that point, it's a futile effort.
It really is. And they said he only went 30 miles, which is hilarious. So he only made it 30 miles and got washed in shore.
I don't know, but that must have been a hell of a workout for the 30 miles.
No kidding. Yeah, you basically ran a full marathon.
Oh my God. Yeah, but with the water, like I said, it must have been a hell of a workout. He must have been in pretty good shape.
It had to have been.
What do you think of some of the economic stuff in the market action this week with the Fed raise of rates yesterday? A very good GDP number today, and the market is still going. And we'll get into some of the other factors where Europe, other parts of the world, and most of our leading economic indicators are all going and trending down.
Yeah, we're seeing that. And it's interesting talking about GDP. I think that's the big thing out of today. If you look at Econoday, the prior quarter over quarter was 2%, which I think actually blew out the consensus. So the consensus was 1.5%. And the range on this, which I love, I want to be a weatherman or an economist, but the economists were saying the consensus was going to be between 0.3 and 2.2, and it came in at 2.4. GDP is still blowing and going strong on this, which when we look at our leading economic indicators, and I know you're going to go into that a little bit here, but leading economic indicators here are...
Yeah, that's actually going to be the chart I'm going to show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. With GDP still going up, it's postponing that recession that we've been talking about for, I don't know. I honestly don't know at this point. Some of the things just don't make sense to me when some things are trending down, others are trending up.
And the crazy thing is, if you pulled out those top 6 to 8 stocks,
yeah,
we're still up for the year, right? But we're not up as much as we are in the market. This is insane, and I'll go into this in a second. But the crazy thing with this, we are getting some broad-based rallies across some of the laggards that were in the first half this year.
Yeah.
But even so, just too many things just don't make sense. I'll give you a couple of examples here. Let me know if you got the full screen of the slide.
Yep, you're good.
All right, so this actually comes from BlackRock. Just looking at the first half of this year, typically the IT and telecom, right? We know how much they have pushed. The interesting thing is if employment is at a near all-time low, meaning it is just strong. The people that want a job got a job. And if you're looking for a job, that means you're leaving a job to get a job. So that means people are spending, right?
Yep.
Obviously, they're spending to prop up the economy, do what they need to do. Why are consumer staples a negative for the first half of the year?
Yeah.
If a staple is something that we need every day, every week, every month, why are those down for the year? Because if people have money to spend, obviously the discretionary is up, but the staples, why are they negative for the year? And why is that not talked about more?
Yeah.
This was a bit of a conundrum for me to try to digest, because obviously it's paralysis by analysis, but the consumer staples negative for the first half of the year with a hot employment market makes no sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I look at that. I also look, it's interesting, even with healthcare, we've got an aging population, good Lord, we still are I think, feeling the effects of COVID and things like that, with some of this long COVID stuff and all that, and healthcare has been down. It was a call. I admit I made a bad call on healthcare early on in the year, because I figured, I think I made a bad call both on staples and healthcare in my sector sleeves, because logically I would say is we're struggling and going into the year, but even just normal consumer staples should be up, just not as much as everything else. And I look at telecom services, that is a big conundrum for me. Because yes, I agree, we're switching to the 5G world, but that's massive amounts of spending and capital investment. And I don't understand why it's taking off so much.
No, like I said, look, the infamous expression, we've said it before, the markets could stay irrational longer than you could stay solvent. Yeah.
Well,
right?
and I think a lot
even
of
if you're conservative, you're okay. You're not getting a lot of the upside, but we'll get into some of the numbers here. They just don't make sense.
Yeah, and I guess I look at what's going on right now on the AI side of things. As much as I love AI, I listened to 3 conference calls this week, 3 earnings calls this week.
Yeah.
And if it had been a drinking game to say, take a drink every time they said AI on the calls, I would have been plastered within 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Everything is AI.
They're saying they're saying what they know they need, that people need to hear to look at the future of their stock.
That's correct. To look beyond the money, the massive amount of money we're spending on it, where it's not making anything right now, to go that direction. It's intriguing to me. I see that there's going to be a reckoning point at some point there. I just don't know when it's going to happen at this point.
I've been saying September, October as the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And typically before every precipitous fall, you usually have a blow off top.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what we saw in the last month.
Yeah.
It's just this blow off top. The Dow is, I believe, is going to set a record. I don't hold me. I think 100 years or 120 years of the consecutive days going up. Now, I am not a Dow proponent. I follow the S&P 500, even though that's a bit vexing with the way they do their market cap weighting. But the Dow's even worse, being price weighted. But even so, 100, 120 years of not so many days, of this many days, consecutive days being up.
Yeah.
Hey, look, what goes up comes down. There's got to be some mean reversion at some point.
Sure. Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, I can absolutely believe it.
All right. So a couple of other things here. So coming from our friends at the conference board where you were just at, this is really interesting in many different ways. Just starting out with the leading credit index, kind of showing the 6-month ending in June on its own. So obviously what we're seeing here is the numbers are trending better for the month of June compared to the 6 months.
Yeah.
But even non-financial components, this is the big one to me. The ISM orders, we talked about this last podcast. This is the manufacturing. If you just take a look at this, it's sad and pathetic. Here are the new orders, 0.02. It hasn't gone anywhere. Manufacturing's been flat.
Yeah.
Which means we're bringing everything in from internationally.
Correct.
And internationally, many of those countries and continents are either teetering or they're in a recession. Makes no sense.
Yeah. You figure from a balance of trade, we've got a massive balance of trade with China in their favor. And even they're showing signs of slowing like crazy. So
China's talking about economic stimulus. You only offer stimulus in bad, horrible, potentially crisis conditions.
And you're already propping your economy up by building basically empty cities.
Those ghost towns.
The little ghost towns, just so that you can bring people in from the agrarian areas and make them work in your factories or whatever. But once again, it's all right. So you're just propping your economy up by building other things, taking money that you're making from the US and turning it around and building cities that, ghost cities. It's amazing to me. And where the breaking point is, I don't know. I don't see it yet. And I keep pushing my feeling of recession back farther because I just don't see, I see stuff coming apart, but I don't see enough of it coming apart.
The interesting thing is it's depending on how we define a recession, right? And parts of the country have been in a recession for 6 months to a year as it is. But obviously we need to see a break in the employment as far as going to the upside. But right now, many industries are still incredibly hot. And as long as they stay hot and they're still hiring and you don't see a tremendous amount of retrenchment in that employment space, the consumer's powering 2/3 to 3/4 of the economy, it's going to continue. Here was the chart that you just had up.
Yeah.
Showing with the GDP, obviously it doesn't include the number today, but even the LEI number is a leading indicator to real GDP. And we've seen that this is going back 23 years. And we've seen every time there's a yank back in the LEI, the GDP, the economy, the bond market, the stock market follow in kind.
I think the biggest thing that I see, I call myself on it. I'm a big follower of LEI, and I pretty well predicted that we were already in a recession at this point. If you look at the GDP, which is the gray line there, it's reversed, and we don't really ever go into a recession until you start to see it dip off and really hit that 0% line. That's usually right at the point where we start to go into recession. And it's the last couple months have reversed that direction. We're going upward again. That the LEI, the leading economic indicators are in the negative, and they're at a big negative from where we typically see this, but we're just not seeing it out of the GDP, which is intriguing to me why that's continuing to go up.
Yeah. I've always called the economy a bulimic economy, right?
Yeah.
Everything is about binging and purging. So we see these cycles where stimulus goes in, people spend money, they reduce Fed rates. That means more money is being injected to borrow and expand and hire and all the other stuff. And then all of a sudden they're over their skis, they're too far ahead, and then we need a purging, right? And that's what the LEI typically is. It's purging, it's showing the numbers, it's purging all the stimulus and all of the hot economy, and we're following behind. Yeah. This is another interesting one with the LEI 6-month growth rate by percentage. And then you got the warning signal, and then you got the recession signal. Sure. And every single time we've gone below,
it triggers.
Yeah. So the problem is, I think a lot of people have gone broke trying to actually pick the exact window when we're going to be in a recession, because typically even though when you see a lot of the LEI and you got the 2 and 10 spread with the Treasury invert, even when you see that, it takes time for things to unwind themselves. And the Fed rate also is. I think, based on a lot of what I heard yesterday, being data dependent, guess what? They didn't have the GDP when they announced yesterday, the GDP number when they announced yesterday. They have 2 more employment numbers to go, and 2 more CPI and PCE numbers to go before that September meeting. Meaning that if things remain hot, they're going to raise again, at least 1/4 point. It's got to happen. And they've already said there's no way they're going to lower rates before the end of the year.
No, there's no, no.
The fact that somebody would even ask that question should lose their job.
Yeah, there's not a chance on the earth that they're going to reduce rates. And I could clearly see it most of next year. I could clearly see them not doing a whole lot. I could see them just leaving it stable, or even possibly a couple more raises at that point if we still continue to see the strong employment numbers. I think you've just got a lot of factors that are unusual this time. Yeah. There was a massive amount of stimulus. I never realized, I started really digging into the amount of stimulus that was jammed into this market over the last couple of years. And it's to the point where I don't think the Fed has any control over it. All they can do is just keep trying to put the brakes on it, but you just can't absorb that much into the economy. And hey, we've got to keep people employed. Okay, are we keeping people employed? Are we propping companies up that shouldn't be propped up? Are we, backstopping a lot of companies so that they don't lay off? I don't know.
It's a pay it forward.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. You're right.
Yeah.
It's a pay it forward, because we showed the US debt chart in one of our podcasts. All that stimulus, there's no way.
Yeah.
In the next 10 or 20 years, or this next generation, that's going to be cut in half.
Yeah.
We're adding to our debt every day. We're not reducing it. We're not getting rid of it. So our interest payments for this debt is insane. We're going to have to print more money just to pay for the interest payments.
Pay for the interest.
We're not doing anything,
I heard this morning
to get to contract that number.
Yeah, I was driving in this morning. I was listening to somebody talking on one of the news shows this morning, and he said, where interest rates are today are where we were at, I think he said in like 2002, 2003, something like that. And he said at that time, our debt to GDP ratio was 75%. Today, we're at the same thing, and our debt to GDP is 150%.
Yeah.
Working our way up to 250% somewhere by 2050, I think is what they said.
I remember 35 years ago when Japan seemed like they were taking over the world and buying everything, and they were laughing at Japan. I remember people talking about this, about how high their debt to their GDP. I think they were in the 200 or 300%.
Yeah.
And all those chickens came home to roost. And after 30 years, the Nikkei index, which is like our S&P, their Nikkei index finally just hit a 30-year high. They just surpassed their index from 30 years ago. Obviously, the makeup of the companies have changed, just like our indexes. But what does that tell you? I'm not saying there's a direct correlation to their debt to GDP ratio 30 plus years ago to their market, to our market, but maybe there is. Who knows?
Well, you look at it too, if you look at the population, there was a whole bunch of issues that affected that too, because you had this massive debt to GDP that had to get absorbed out. I just see this happening again. the Japanese have a thing called kiritsu, which is they basically, companies prop up other companies to keep them alive, so you don't lose face that your company failed
Right.
and went out.
Subsidies.
Yeah, and so the government provided a lot of subsidies. These groups of companies would prop up other companies. So you have these zombie companies, and I'm like, okay, that's what we're doing right now, and we're jacking up our jet to GDP, and we've got a massively aging population, which is what happened to Japan as well. You had a massively aging population, and so it took a while for that to work its way through. So it was a lot of things, and I'm like, it's like the game plan of Japan back then. We're trying to play the same game again by saying we're not going to let any of these companies fail. Okay, some of them are going to have to fail.
Right. To keep moving forward. No, I agree. Yeah. But here is the last slide. So Conference Board does this CEO survey.
Yeah.
And I really thought this was interesting. So looking over here, what are CEOs expecting? A brief and shallow recession, better than 85%.
Okay.
And this goes back to the last 3 quarters, Q4, Q1, Q2. They're still expecting a pullback in the economy.
Yeah.
And only less than 10% don't anticipate a recession at all. But those are probably the ones in the tech companies, but we don't know exactly the breakout of it.
Yeah,
but if you take a look
at tech companies don't use any logic at all as far as how they go up or down. It's all based on what the future is going to happen, and trying to figure out what the future of it is. Yeah. I guess I'm in that camp a little bit, that I think it's going to be shallower than we think. This is probably the most anticipated recession in history, because I've heard people talking about it. We've been talking about it all this year as we've been doing these shows, and we were talking about it a year ago. It reminds me of the days when we talked about when interest rates were going to go up, when we went probably 8 years of predicting interest rates going up before they actually went up.
Yeah. Yep. And then the chart on the right is the CEO confidence.
Yeah.
It ticked down. You could just see it's not above 50% on this. And that means that, are the CEOs tightening? Are they doing CapEx spending?
Yeah.
Are they hiring? Because the CapEx spending and the hiring is how these companies expand. And obviously, if their confidence is low, they're not going to be borrowing. They're not going to be expanding. Now, the job market has slowed down. I know I didn't see the last JOLTS number, but even so, we're going to get another number next Friday. As far as the unemployment number, we'll see where that's at. If that ticks down again, I think there's got to be a 70 to 80% chance we're going to get a Fed rate hike in September. The CEO survey is, you can see the accuracy on that for the last 23 years, as far as when they're losing confidence and either we're ticking towards a recession or at least some kind of a retrenchment in the economy. Well, I like these surveys. You can't get into, there's no real meat of the bones of this. But it's a nice indicator.
But I think I look at it from the point of a CEO. If you've got, all right, we've got a lot of, literally it's every day, it's new government regulation. So you can't really predict. Basically, we're going to be living in mud huts with pots of water boiling over a fireplace, which would probably cause some kind of global issue if we did that too. So we're just going to have to wash in cold water. It's literally every single appliance in the house. There's going to be regulation on. You don't know where interest rates are going to be. I see it from a CEO's confidence point of view. It's, dude, I can't predict anything. So I'm going to pull back. My confidence is not there to make long-term decisions right now. So I get it from that perspective of, okay, I just can't predict something. So I think you'll see confidence pick up if at least the Fed gets to the point where they're like, okay, we think we're good at this point. We're gonna stay stable. I can live with high rates if I know that they're not going to get higher. Because most loans, if they're going to borrow at a bank, it's a floating loan, and it might be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's a floating loan. So I don't know if you're going to keep raising rates or rates are going to stay high. I can't really predict what my future is going to be like, but at least if I know, okay, we're there and we're not going up, okay, now I can actually predict, and I can make a decision that says, okay, I think my cost of capital is going to be here for the next 5 years. Okay, I can predict and figure out if that's worth me making the investment.
Yep. No, I hear you. And maybe many of these CEOs are in manufacturing in some capacity. And that's why the ISM number is negative. The new order numbers, maybe because they're looking out not just 3-6 months, but 6 to 12 months for their book to bill ratios. So they can have some type of predictability with their cash flow. And maybe that's another reason why their confidence is lower. They know it's right in front of them they can't really see or predict beyond the horizon line right now.
They just don't have
that much more uncertainty.
They just don't have that visibility 3 or 5 years out at this point to be able to make those. And like I said, we were talking about that with the Richmond Fed, the New York Fed, the Philly Fed. All those manufacturing surveys were showing negative. So I agree. I think it's just that point where there's so much uncertainty that I think a lot of these guys are just pulling back a little bit. Guys and gals are pulling back a little bit and saying, okay, I'm going to focus on what I can see, and I'm not going to focus on trying to predict the future because I can't accurately predict it right now.
I'll give you one last point with that, and that is semiconductors. Chips aren't everything. The interesting thing is the two biggest companies out there that are, let's just call it, that are not only the leaders in the semiconductor, but obviously they're bellwethers as far as indicating. Actually, let's go to three. Taiwan Semi, Intel, NVIDIA is still flying mainly because of their AI chip, right? The rest of their orders for their other chips are okay at best. Intel's chart looks terrible. They're not doing well. And Taiwan Semiconductor just had a negative profit growth quarter. They're the largest semiconductor.
They're the big boys on the block.
And they're in AI, and so is Intel and whatever. NVIDIA is a leader there. But if Taiwan Semiconductor and Intel, which are bigger companies by overall manufacturing than NVIDIA, and they're trending down, what is that telling you about, let's just say, the forecasting of the next 6 to 12 months as far as the demand for goods? Because in almost anything electronics got a chip in it.
And it's not just, you figure every single device today has got chips in it.
Absolutely.
It's your dishwasher, your stove, your anything, everything relies on that. And if we're not seeing that coming across the market, what are they predicting, or what are they seeing in their future? And once again, I see what's short term. I see some clarity that things are continuing to do well, but that over the horizon, I just can't predict at this point.
Now, look, we talked about it, 2-3 weeks ago. July is historically a very good month in the market. August is very mixed, and August is the big vacation month. So it could be just an end of the July push to say, bye-bye, I'm on vacation, and we'll see what happens. Again, this could be the blow off top prior to either stable pricing or a pullback. Again, I don't wish for it. Everybody's happy with their accounts. It should be interesting to see at least what the employment number is next Friday for July. And we'll have another podcast before then, but we'll see what happens during that month of August and going right after Labor Day.
I think it's interesting going into this. Because once again, as I've said before, though, when we grew up in the industry, it was literally New York just vacated to Long Island and
the Hamptons.
To the Hamptons, and there was just low volume. You had a lot of volatility, but so much trading today is done electronically by computers that I don't know if we really have that anymore. I think the difference is there's a propensity, I think, for a little bit more volatility in August because the computers tend to be very reactionary, and it requires, I think what happens during the normal part of the year is the rational people, which is, it's an oxymoron, but the rational people soften that out a little bit because they look for opportunities to trade in there. But I don't know. It's been a perplexing thing the last few summers watching it because volumes have stayed pretty high. And I think a lot of it's just because the AI background or the bots that are trading keep trading when everybody else is sitting in the Hamptons.
They're estimating 2/3 to 3/4 of the trading volume are the computers, are algorithms, whether they're scalpers just scraping off fractional cents or the ones that are just creating a market. 2/3 to 3/4 is a lot. which is why they had to put in a lot of those safeguards in there for 10% up and down in prices.
Yeah, because they read off of Twitter headlines and everything else and just react, and the other ones react on top of it, and they can pile on pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it's we want to contain that volatility a little bit.
Well, we could do a whole podcast just on high frequency trading at some point.
Oh, good Lord, yes. So one of the things I'm going to do here, and just for the audience, I've got a friend of mine that is in the college loan space that I'm going to do an interview with here pretty quick, really talking about some of these governmental programs that are available and things along those lines for the federal student loan debt. There was an announcement, I think it was earlier this week, that the Department of Education is going to be changing up some of their rules and crediting people for I haven't figured this out, crediting people for having paid loans, even though they didn't pay loans. So just a lot of stuff going on. And so we'll do a quick interview on that, just to give everybody an update of what's going on in that college loan space, because we've talked about it. That's all coming on board or coming online.
Oh yeah, next 30 to 45
in
days.
A month from now, basically a month and a half from now, that's all coming online again, and that could have some pretty dramatic effect on the market. Some of this consumer spending that we're seeing could dry up pretty quickly as people have to write checks for $400 or $500 that they haven't had to for the last 3 years.
We shall see. Till next week.
Till the next one. All right, man. Thanks a lot for your stuff today, Ron. Folks, as always, thank you for being on here. Please share this with folks. Also, give us a comment. You guys have been really good about that, and I thank you, because it's helped us to make some switches and changes to the overall format that we're doing. Hopefully you enjoy the Florida Man stories. We'll keep doing those because it's just funny and it's enjoyable to talk about.
Endless content there.
It is. Yeah, you could just do Florida Man stories for the rest of your life and you'd be fine. We'll see y'all back here the very next time. See you next week.